respond as you want. In Jesus' name, amen. So there has been 5 purposes in life that I have been sharing with you as a church, and underneath this series, what on earth am I here for? The number one question that everybody asks is, what's my purpose in life? And so we as a church have been journeying through this. And so what I want to do is just remind you that the first purpose that we talked about was worship. And worship, the purpose of worship is loving God. That's what we do here on a Sunday morning. Many times we think about the word worship and we think about being here and singing songs, but it's so much more than just singing songs. Then I talked the next week about this term called fellowship, the second purpose that we all should be striving for. And fellowship is loving other people. And in a church is a great area for that to happen. In small groups is where we thrive on that. And then last week I talked to you about discipleship as the third purpose that we should be pursuing in our lives. What is discipleship? It's trying to become like Christ. And how do we do that? We do that through Christ. Amen? Today I want to talk to you about the fourth purpose. And the fourth purpose is this: ministry. The fourth purpose or ministry is to realize that you are shaped to serve God. If you have your Bibles with you, or if you have your app, I would open up to the next verse coming up, because it's Matthew chapter 20 and verse 8 or 28. I just want to read a portion of that to you. And actually, I'll read verse 26 first. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be a servant. And whoever would be first among you must be your slave. In verse 28, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And church, that's what I want to talk to you about today. And that is that word, that ministry, that word where we serve other people. And we don't do this for our own glory. We do this so that God gets the glory. And so today I want to share with you 4 different ways that serving helps us be like Jesus. And serving like Jesus, number 1, means being available. Sometimes if I catch you or corner you, I may start with this: just say yes. All right, no matter what's about to come out of my mouth, no matter what I'm about to ask, just say yes. All right? Now, usually whenever I lead with that, I can see the fear in their eyes. I can see they're looking for the exit where they can get out of this opportunity. Last week, some people just said yes. We as a church collectively served. It was an incredible day to watch. It's amazing that this sermon comes the week after we as a church served over and over again. And I remember I asked, actually I didn't ask, they got voluntold. If your wife asks you to do something, that's effectively being voluntold. And Rhonda asked Steve, voluntold him that he was going to drive the bus with Jay, and they were going to go pick up a family for Sunday, and they did that. Matter of fact, Steve had told the men at group on Monday night that he wasn't excited about doing that. Have you ever done that? You've been voluntold to do something, you weren't very excited about doing that? All right, there's some liars in here today, because I only saw a couple of hands. All right? You know, anyways, and they said yes. They got the bus. They were out there. And maybe y'all know the story from last week, but they picked up the family. They're a block down the road or so, and the bus just stops operating. I'm over here in our conference room. I'm talking to one of the young men that's going to get baptized next week and talking about salvation and baptism. And Rhonda burst into the door and she says, "Stop, I've got something more important than salvation and baptism." No, she didn't say that. She did not say that. Don't give her a hard time. But she did say the bus just broke down. And I use the magic words that when anything breaks, I use all the time here at the church. And I said, "Go tell Roger." And she left, and I realized, you know what, so I finished up talking to this young man, and I tried to catch up to Rhonda, and there was Roger. He had 2 fryers going with the chicken that we were going to eat later that day. I mean, it was smelling good. I almost got distracted and forgot why I had come in there. And so we got Jay and Steve on the phone and tried to do a talk through of getting it working. Not going to happen. And so Roger says, well, because they broke down right in the middle of the street. And Roger says, you know what? I just need to take my truck out there and we'll pull it and get it off the road. And so all of a sudden, Roger and Carla go into action. All right? And so they get their vehicles and they start heading in that direction. Well, do you just leave boiling grease with food in it? No. And so what happened was I saw two men. I saw Eric and I saw Chuck, and I said, men, come with me. They don't know anything more. I didn't even ask, just say yes. And I said, can you guys finish what's going on here? And they jumped in, and I think they drafted someone else to come in and help as well. See, when you serve like Jesus, you make yourself available. One of the ladies that had come on the bus with her family, a very extended family, needed help getting home. And someone in the church just said yes. Matter of fact, I heard Josh mention it in an announcement when he was, and then someone pulled me aside and said, hey, I've got my van here. It's open, it's a lot of space in the back. I'd be happy to help out. That's what serving like Jesus means when it says that we're available. Here's what God's word says in Proverbs 3 and verse 28. It says these words here. If you can help your neighbor now, okay, let me say that again. And I want you guys to say the last word here. If you can help your neighbor now, all right, don't say, come back tomorrow and then I'll help you. There is nothing like urgency, especially if you're on the other end. I mean, could you imagine if I would have told Rhonda, tell Steve and Jay, we'll get them after the service. That wouldn't have sounded, those words just wouldn't have meant anything. If Eric and Chuck would have said, no, we've already got jobs this morning. That wouldn't have been very helpful, would it? If Beth wouldn't have said, hey, I've got a van, I can help. See, and it wasn't just these groups that I'm talking about. All over this church, people just said yes. They lived out Proverbs 3:20. They could help their neighbor when? And they did. You see, often later becomes never. Have you ever done that? I'm gonna never happens. I'm gonna buy my wife a gift for Mother's Day. I'm going to get this incredible anniversary gift. And then whatever you were going to do, you never do. I think that's what Proverbs 3:28 is saying. If you can help your neighbor when? Don't say, come back tomorrow. Don't say, I'll do it later. You see, I believe that time is not measured in minutes, it's not measured in hours, it's not measured in weeks, months, or years. I believe as I get older that time is measured in opportunities. What do I mean by that? Buy the gift now. Give the flowers now. Make the call now. Say the words that you want to say now. Guys, it's now o'clock. Now is the time to take action. Some of y'all are here and didn't realize that today was Mother's Day. Yes, now is the appointed time for you to hit the gas station and pick up flowers or cards or something on your way home. I hope you took 2 cars. The time to be available to serve like Jesus is now. You are shaped to serve God now. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. The time is now. You should serve like Jesus by being available. The second thing I want to tell you today is that you serve like Jesus means being grateful. Now, it's interesting. I mean, what better place to be on a Sunday morning than church? All right? All of us should have a big smile on our face. But don't look around, but not everybody has a smile on their face. Some of you, something happened today and you're disappointed. Some of you, there's something going on in your life and you're perplexed. But when it comes to serving like Jesus, we need to learn to tap into being grateful. I think of a Disney song, Whistling or Whistle While You Work from Snow White. And the question I have for you today is, are you whistling while you work or are you grumbling while you grind? Let me read the words to this theological song. It says, just whistle while you work, put on that grin and start right in to whistle loud and long. Just hum a merry tune, just do your best and take a rest and sing yourself a song. You know, I can tell when somebody's having a good day because they're walking around doing what? Whistling, humming, or singing. And did you know that this Snow White theology is in the Bible? It is. You find it in Psalm 100 and verse 2. And Psalm 100 and verse 2 says this, serve the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. See, that's what Sunday should look like. That you, those of you that are being asked to serve, you should serve the Lord with what? Gladness. And how should we enter into his presence? With singing. That's right, Psalm 100 and verse 2. The third thing I want you to realize as a Christ follower when it comes to serving like Jesus means being faithful. You see, it's okay to have a season of rest. Carrie and I have been there, where in the church we just got beat up. There was church hurt, there was church ignorance, there was a lot of things that wasn't what it should be. And so there was a season, and we were very busy in those churches. But there was a season that we stepped back. And we did like many of you, and we came and we sat in a seat. And we did a little more than that. And here's what I want you to know, that it's okay to go through a season like that. But just like the weather in Illinois, seasons change. And you need to realize that sooner or later, you've got to get back in the saddle. Carrie and I did that, and we never regretted taking that step. Matter of fact, I remember Carrie says that she never wanted to work in a church again. See, Sundays are nice, and this is where you see the best of everybody. But during the week, sometimes you see not the best in everybody. During the week, you see a very gross misapplication of Scripture. And it's easy to make anybody want to say to themselves, you know, this is not what I signed up for. But the reality is, you don't serve the people here in this church, you serve God. And if you'll keep your focus on serving God instead of the people, while you serve the people, things will change. The season will change. Galatians 6:9 says the words this way. And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap. Boy, if you were a farmer, aren't you excited about the fact that if you'll plant the crop, if you'll take care of the crop, if you'll do what you're supposed to do, in due season, what will happen? You'll reap. You know what? Right now, the fields are a lot of dirt. You don't realize what's underneath the ground. But pretty soon, in just a couple of weeks, and certainly in 2 months, the corn is going to be taller than each of us. The soybeans are going to be growing. Whatever the crop is that's in that field is going to be there. And one day, each one of those farmers will reap if they don't give up. The truth of the matter is that each of you may be in that season where you have seeds planted. You have been planting seeds, and all it looks like is a barren, dirt-covered acre after acre after acre in your life. And what God's Word says, that don't be weary about this. Don't worry about the April showers. Don't worry about that it's not growing as quickly as you want to in May. For in due season, you will reap. Don't rush the season. Enjoy the spring. Make it through the summer. Now, all of you who have been complaining about being cold, I just got one thing to say. It's about to stop. And in a couple of weeks, there's another group that's going to start coming to church. You know what they're going to complain about? It's too hot. Yes, that's right. But here's the reality, folks. The season will change. The temperature is going to cool off in the fall. And then guess what we're going to complain about then? It's too cold. There's no leaves. It's dreary when you look out. I mean, come on. That's one thing about Illinois in the month of January. You know, the word that I would describe is dreary. But here's what God says. Maybe you're going through a January in Illinois in your spiritual life. And God says this, don't grow weary, because in due season, you will reap if you don't give up. Sometimes, folks, we just got to keep showing up. Sometimes the way that we serve God is by being faithful. By even when you don't feel like it, showing up one more time, one more Sunday, one more Bible study, one more small group. Because you never know when that small group is going to change your life or change somebody else's life. The last thing I'll share with you is this, that serving like Jesus means being generous. Oh, when I think of the word generosity, I can think of nothing else but moms. You see, moms don't consider themselves generous. Matter of fact, they think it's part of the job. But the reality is that it's mom that when she saved up money for something for herself and a child or grandchild needs or wants something, that she pulls from that money to get them what they need or want. It's a mom who allows the plate of food that she's eating, that she's enjoying, that a child wants, that she gives up for them. The same child does that to the dad and has a fork in his hand. And I don't mean holding it. See, moms, by their nature, are generous. And when we serve like Jesus, it means being generous. You see, in God's economy, it just works. Let me share with you the Bible verse that I believe really points out in God's economy, it just works. Proverbs 11:24 says this, one person gives freely, yet gains even more. It doesn't make sense. When it says gives freely, it means just throwing it out there. It doesn't make sense in the business model. It doesn't make sense in the worldly model. But you know what? It makes sense in God's economy model. That he or her who gives freely, they gain even more. And just in case you're wondering, it says that there's someone else that withholds, and they withhold when they shouldn't. They withhold when they've got more than anybody else, and they hold it to themselves, but only come to poverty. I believe that this is true in our time, our talent, and our treasure. For us, we experienced this when we felt God's calling to come to Centralia, because there was a decision that we had to make. Were we going to come to Centralia and serve this church, or were we going to move to Memphis and be grandparents? You can imagine that was a tough decision if you're a grandparent. Those of you who haven't had children, haven't had grandchildren yet, you're like, that's not hard. It was a tough decision. Matter of fact, when we made the decision we were down in Memphis with our grandchild at that time and with our son and his wife when the call came for us to be coming to Centralia. And if you ever talk to Carrie and I, we thought that meant giving up. See, I spent my time in the military. My dad spent his time in the military, and we did not have grandma and grandpa that lived down the street. We didn't have a grandma and grandpa that we got to go over and have dinner with and get spoiled all the time. We got to see grandma and grandpa once or twice a year if we were lucky. Because typically the military had us hours away from them. And we thought that, as I was coming to the end of my military career, that maybe, just maybe, God would be good to us and allow us to be close to our grandchildren. And he calls us to Centralia. I got to ask why a lot of times. But here's how it works in God's economy. In November, we moved here. In January, we got a call from our son saying, hey, Katie's thinking about going to a nursing school in St. Louis. And we didn't respond. We thought that they were just pulling our leg or something. You know how your kids sometimes change their mind, you know? And 3 months later, guess who lives 50 miles away? Our grandkids. They brought their parents with them, and that's okay. You see, the person who gives freely gains even more. Yet the one who withholds unduly comes to poverty. It also happens with our talent. I think of people who have been blessed with talent, someone like Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston grew up in the church. She grew up singing in the choir. She was recognized for her ability because of what she was doing in the church. And then one day, she took that talent outside of the church. And one day, she didn't get fulfilled serving God, and she started serving someone else and something else. She was still just as good a singer. One of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. But yet she died in a hotel room in a drug overdose. Why? Because nothing outside of God could fix, could solve. Proverbs 11:24, one withholds unduly and it comes to poverty. Young lady who's still very popular today, Katy Perry. Her dad was a preacher. She grew up in the church. She learned how to sing in the church. And one day she left the church. And she took her talent somewhere else. And today she's serving that talent somewhere else. Another lady, Aretha Franklin, grew up, guess where? In the church. Was singing, guess where? In the church. And then one day, someone convinced her to leave the church, make some money. If you've ever watched the autobiography movie of Aretha, you'll realize that that life wasn't as glamorous as we see. The person who gives freely gains more. The one who withholds unduly, they come to poverty with their time and their talent, and also with their treasure. I've preached this to you many times, church. Malachi 3:10 has this statement, and most of us read it, and we read it, I believe, incorrectly, where it says, wherein will a man rob God? And we think that by withholding our tithes, withholding our offerings, we're robbing God. And I don't believe for a second that the God who owns everything, the God who literally, when you get to heaven, he's going to pave the streets with gold. That same God, the way that you rob him is you stop him from being able to intervene in your life, to insert himself in your life, to rebuke the devourer. Because the truth of the matter is the devourer's at work in your lives. The truth of the matter is the devourer has free reign because you have withheld unduly. And one day you'll come to poverty. How do we serve like Jesus? It means being generous. We continue in Proverbs 11:25. It says this, a generous person will what? Prosper. And listen to this. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Oh, I imagine that there are days when you come and you serve at church that you are worn out. But here's what I have realized, that the happiest people here on each Sunday are those that are serving. Watch the smiles as you pick up their kids. I don't know if it's because you're picking up their kid or because they got to share the gospel and scripture with them, but they're going to be smiling. Did you see the smiles up here on your worship team as they're praising God? Do you realize that they were here very early this morning practicing, that they were here throughout the week practicing, that many of them met up at other times practicing? It wasn't just the 20 minutes that you saw them up here on stage. They were generous. And because they've been generous, they will prosper. And ultimately, let me just share this message with you. is that if you are not serving, something is not getting done. Let me read that again because some of you just went, whew. If you are not serving, something is not getting done. I have been very clear with the church for over the last year that if we don't have people to do it, we won't do it. Oh, it may be a great and noble thing, but if the people don't rally around it, if we don't support it financially, if we don't support it with our talent, if we don't support it with our time, we won't be able to do it. We're not going to take the 5 or 10 people that consistently show up and wear them out because other people refuse to show up. See, here's the truth. When you are not available, something's not getting done. When you don't just say yes, something doesn't get done. Availability is an ability that all of us have. But the reality is that we allow things to get in front of God. You know what they are. That thing that keeps you from reading your Bible. That thing that keeps you from praying. That thing that keeps you from showing up at church on Sunday. You may not say this out loud. You may not think these words. But your actions say this. That is more important than God. When you are not grateful, something's not getting done. Do you realize that grateful people do more than ungrateful people? Grateful people find a way. Ungrateful people find an excuse. What are you not grateful for? Are you not grateful that Jesus Christ died for you? Are you not grateful that your son or your daughter has made a public profession of faith? What is it that you're not grateful for that you refuse to serve? I know that's not the right way to look at it. The right way to look at it is what are you grateful for? What has God done for you? What has He worked in your life? And when you focus on that, all of a sudden it gets a little easier. It gets a little easier to invest your time, your talent, your treasure. See, when we give up, when we're not faithful, something's not getting done. I can only imagine that season of rest that Carrie and I took, how many people did we walk by that needed to hear about Jesus that we didn't talk to them about it? How many people in your season of life, in your season of rest, in your season of comfort, are you walking by and you fail to have a conversation about Jesus Christ? You fail to have a spiritual conversation. You fail to take a conversation in that direction. And I can only imagine how many people are going to miss out on hearing the message. And let me finish with this. When we are not generous, something is not getting done. Next week, we're going to give you a phenomenal opportunity to be generous. The youth are going to be up here, and after the church service, there's a spaghetti luncheon, and that is about raising money for them to go to the Ark Encounter. Folks, we have a generous church. I've seen you operate already. The youth are doing phenomenally well. I imagine that next week when you see the youth lead in worship, when you see the youth in the different roles that they're going to be filling, that you are going to be generous with your grace and love and just speaking words of affirmation into their lives. But what areas are we not generous? What are we holding back on? And Proverbs says, whatever that you're holding on to, you're going to lose. I'll tell you why we don't serve. We don't serve because we're trying to save our own life. I didn't say this, Jesus did. In Matthew chapter 16 and verse 25, any of you who try to save the life that you have will lose it. And many of you are holding on to that life. Many of you don't want to lose a friend that you like, but you know that they're leading you away from God. And one day you're going to lose. Many of you are holding on to things that you know are wrong, and yet you refuse to let them go. And one day you are going to lose because you held on to that which is temporary. And Jesus says it this way, but you who give up your life for me will find true life. Trying to save your life or trying to serve with your life? That is the question we each get to answer today. I started off this morning by taking you to Matthew chapter 20 and verse 28, and I'll close doing the same thing. Matthew chapter 20 and verse 28 says, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to what? Serve. And the second half of that verse is this, and to give his life as a ransom for many. That's what we're called to do. We're called to give up our lives. And here's what's funny. In God's economy, when you give up your life, God gives you a better life. When you give up your life, God somehow takes what seems like the worst decision you've ever made in your life, and he just blesses it. And he keeps on blessing. But here's the problem. Many of you never get through that season of the taking away. Many of you never get through that season of giving up your life, and you never see his blessings. And you spend years mad at God. You spend years blaming God. You spend years when should we start serving? Now, today, this week. I know there's another group in here that second half of the verse is right for you. And he gave his life a ransom for you. Jesus Christ died on the cross for you. He gave his life for all those evil, wicked things that you've done. He gave his life so that you could one day receive that grace and give that grace to somebody else. But if you've never received it, you can't give it. If you don't accept God's forgiveness, you'll never be able to forgive. If you don't accept God's mercy, you'll never be merciful to other people. And if you've never just allowed the grace of God to pour over your life, you'll never be able to pour grace into somebody else's life. Today, now, I would make the decision. We've got decision cards there in front of every chair. And I would encourage you, if you've never asked Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior, that you look at that. And if you are ready to admit that, you know what, I am a sinner. You know, I don't have a problem. I'm here to tell you that I'm probably the most broken pastor in this town. But I'm also probably the most grace-filled pastor because of what God has done for me. See, I've admitted that I'm a sinner. And then I do that little B thing called believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and that he died for my sins. Amen. As a 7-year-old little boy, I realized that I was going to die and go to hell. Not anymore. And then I did the third thing, the C. I confessed that Jesus Christ is Lord. Next Sunday, that's what baptism is all about. It's a public profession of faith. As 10 people go down in that water, they're going to come out wet, but you know what? They're going to come out with a testimony of what Jesus Christ has done in their life. Would you stand to your feet, worship team, if you'll come forward?